Perhaps one of the most debated topics in the tomato growing world is to prune or not to prune. And if you're searching this topic, it's very difficult to find the answer because there are so many varying opinions out there. You're going to come across advice that says to prune off every sucker so that you just have one main leading stem and so that your plants can grow bigger tomatoes. And then you're going to come across advice that says to not prune and to just let your tomato plants grow as is, and so that you get lots of fruit. And then you might come across some AI created videos that are going to give you really conflicting information because they usually don't even get the terms of the tomato plants right. I've come across a few of those lately, and that is a big rant of mine. Definitely don't listen to the AI created content that's out there these days. So anyways, if you want to grow healthy tomato plants, you can do that whether you prune or whether you don't prune. But depending on the climate that you live in, it is a best practice to do certain techniques so that your tomato plants can grow better in the climate that you're in. And I am a zone 9 gardener here in the hot Central Valley of California. And so what I do is going to vary from someone in a very mild summer climate because our growing conditions are just drastically different. So in this video, I'm going to be covering why you may want to prune, reasons why you should not prune, and just some general advice that's going to help you grow a healthier crop of tomatoes this season. So the very first thing is that in general, people say to prune off all of the suckers because then it gives more energy to the plant and the plant can focus its energy on producing larger tomatoes. But if you're anything like me, I don't really care if I get a really big tomato. I want lots of tomatoes. And when you prune off all of the suckers, you're going to be getting less fruit because every sucker turns into another branch that is going to have fruiting tomatoes on it. And so what's really cool about tomatoes is that you can prune off a sucker, put the sucker into some potting soil or into a glass of water, and it's going to form roots, and that can grow a whole new tomato plant. So if you want to quickly multiply all of the plants that you have growing in your garden, you can just clip your own sucker right off your currently growing plant and repot it and then plant it out in the garden. But what that means is that the sucker is going to form more fruit. And so if you prune all of those off, you're going to be getting less fruit. And sure, if you do prune off some of the suckers and the plant focuses more of its energy and attention to just a few leading stems, that will possibly give you larger fruit. But there's not many gardeners out there that I know of, unless you're entering a large tomato growing contest, that really care if their tomatoes are that big. They just want lots of tomatoes all throughout the season. And so personally, I don't prune off all of the suckers. However, as my tomato plants are growing, I continuously come through and I prune off any leaves that are touching the soil. And sometimes I even prune off some leaves in the center of the plants to give the plants some more airflow. But I prune off very minimal suckers. Here and there, I do prune off a few of the suckers, which, in case you aren't aware, the sucker is this branch that comes out at a 45-degree angle. So you have your main stem of your tomato plant, and then you have a leaf, and then you have this branch that comes right out of the center, and that is your sucker. And that is what's going to turn into another fruiting vine on your tomato plant. And one of the things that I do when I plant my tomatoes is I give them plenty of space to grow. I'm growing them on this cattle panel trellis, and I have each plant spaced out at about 4 feet apart right now. And I know there are many gardeners that are going to argue and say that's way too much space, but if you can see here, my tomato plants are still practically touching in many areas because each plant is so big that it's growing to its full potential because I have given it the amount of space that it really needs to thrive. If you shove a bunch of tomato plants in a small area, they're all going to grow and they're going to develop fruit, but they are not going to all get as big as these tomato plants right here because they don't have the space to grow. The other reason why I don't like to over prune my tomato plants is because I want the extra foliage to protect the fruit. When it gets really hot, the fruit tends to get sunburnt, but when you have that extra foliage to protect the fruit, you don't have to worry about it. You can always add shade cloth to protect your plants, but it's just easier when the plants themselves provide the protection that the fruit needs. So if you also live in a hot climate where your fruit needs to be protected from the hot sun, I suggest that you prune very minimally. The only time that I would prune tomato plants and prune off extra suckers is when you want to produce more plants to plant out in your garden. And right now is a great time to do that. You can prune off some suckers to root and then have a late season tomato harvest. And if you head to this video right here, I show you exactly how to root your own tomato plants. It's incredibly simple. So just head to that video next and I will see you there.